I'm so excited to jump into today's episode because there are just so many things to learn from having a body. And there's no doubt I'm just scratching the surface of all the profound spiritual lessons we can learn. Today is part 2 of a series on the doctrine and power of the body. In part 1, we explored some foundational doctrines and explored body image, so be sure to go back and listen to that episode. Body image is a huge thing many of us grapple with, but I think just as profound can be the battle with an imperfect physical body, and oftentimes the two intertwine. With your body as your constant companion, you will inevitably face the realities of your body not physically functioning how you think it should. This, too, is fertile ground for God to do His work and teach us some of the most fundamental lessons He needs us to learn. What better way to learn surrender to God than when facing pain? What better way to learn patience than when your physical abilities are not what you think they should be? What better way to learn our need for God's power than when we are faced with physical impairments we need help to overcome? Welcome to Measure of Her Creation. It was perfect timing to be thinking about this topic this week because my baby was sick, and it gave me a specific reason to think about the lessons of having a physical body that is so prone to disease and imperfection. As I tearily walked out of the pediatrician because it had been a long day with a crying baby and my husband is out of town, I thought, if I didn't have a body, I never would have birthed this child, and she never would have experienced this sickness. This was not a regretful statement, but one to make me pause and actually appreciate that this moment of struggle is actually a beautiful part of my growth as a mother and as a human, all brought to me by having a body. Physical decay and limitations bring you to the depths like nothing else can. And because you are so intrinsically connected to your body, these are depths that are difficult to run away from. Like I said in the first episode, there are some problems you can run away from in life, but struggles within your imperfect body are ones you cannot run away from. They're in your face, they are ever present, they can be overt or they can be subtle, and both can be excruciating. It can come from disease, accident, age, genetics, or be totally random, which can be the most confusing of all. I don't think any of us are necessarily under the impression that if we hate the shape of our nose, we can pray and the good Lord will change it for us. But of course, if we have a disease or something going wrong with our physical function, we ask God to heal us, to take it away, to relieve us from the burden. We believe in a Jesus who performs miracles, especially where bodies are concerned. He makes the blind to see, the deaf to hear, the dead to rise. So it can feel confusing and even faith-shaking when a sought-after miracle does not come to pass because relief feels so vital to our well-being. I've come to learn that there is purpose in God's healing, and there is purpose when we have to wait for the healing. But oh, how hard that is to accept. When the Book of Mormon talks about the natural man being an enemy to God, I think in large part it is because of the natural weaknesses and struggles that come with having a physical body. We get tired, we feel lazy, we experience hormones that make us moody. I'm still trying to accept that one. We have chemicals in our brain that drive us to seek dopamine. We have sexual urges that are God-given and beautiful, and still take self-control to exercise in God-given bounds. And purely by being mortal, we are in a degenerative process. We will age. We will have some form of disease or dis-ease. We will die. So why would God give us a gift that will eventually expire? And a gift that is so high maintenance and full of weakness? I'm not going to lie. For me, the fact that I have to feed myself regularly and stop everything to make food feels like such a suck on my time and lifeblood. Obviously, that reflects immense abundance and blessing, that my time is not just completely taken up by finding, growing, or foraging for food and surviving day by day. But nevertheless, I often have the conversation in my head like this. If God could design my body and this mortal life any way he wanted, why would he make it so I need to eat 3 times a day and sleep for a third of my life? Why is so much of the demand of having a body just repetitive tasks? Why can't I be strong without exercise? Why can't my time be spent elsewhere besides just basically living and taking care of my body? But if it is by design, then repetition must be kind of key to God's core curriculum. And if you think about generations past and realize that most of their time and existence was taken up purely by trying to feed themselves and keep themselves alive, then there must actually be some spiritual significance to the physical survival we have to do every day. Most people in the history of the world, including in our modern world, have not had the privilege to sit and read a book or learn from great teachers or travel just for the fun of it or start a podcast. Their circumstances and their bodies demand physical labor and eating bread by the sweat of their brow. Yet, I am positive God would say that the people who simply survived had meaningful and purposeful mortal experiences too, even if all they accomplished was that daily survival. The lessons they learned in taking care of a physical body, even if that is all they did, were significant enough to make the journey to Earth worth it. As an aside, you might be a mother in the thick of it, feeling like feeding yourself and your kids is literally all you can accomplish in a day. This is a reminder to you that even if survival is all you accomplish, God still saw that as a significant enough, worth it enough thing to send you down to Earth to experience. So this was a high commitment decision we made in the premortal world to come get a body. You think having a child is a high commitment? What about having a body? Your body never grows up or leaves home or becomes independent. It is forever demanding your time, attention, and effort from the moment you are conceived until the moment you die. Managing a physical body is like the ultimate ninja warrior course for your spirit. It requires so much from your spirit that was never required of you in the premortal world. Thankfully, our bodies are not just leeches on our time and energy. They are also walking miracles. You don't have to think about breathing or your heart pumping your blood through your body. It just happens. You don't have to will a scrape to heal. It just does. So some things in your physical body take all of you to manage, and some things are just given. And that alone teaches you about the generosity and the expectations of our Father in heaven. And oh, what beauty we can experience in our physical bodies as well. Simply to soak in our 5 senses is such an incredible opportunity of mortality. Each of the ordinances we engage in as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints also requires something physical of us, which in and of itself can be instructive to look at. We participate in the sacrament by eating the bread and drinking the water, not only symbolically taking Christ upon ourselves, but also taking him into ourselves and making him a part of us. We get baptized and are immersed in water. We are washed and anointed in the initiatory, receiving specific blessings for every part of our bodies. In both the endowment and sealings, we learn signs and tokens that are not just listened to and observed, but physically given and received. Salvation truly is mediated through the body. So we are going to explore a few different topics that involve our bodies and some lessons we learned from them. I'm sure I could do a whole podcast on each of these topics I'm going to cover, but this is an overview to help illustrate how many functions the body has in God's plan and his effort to exalt us. And hopefully, if you are passing through a physical challenge, this will help you bring God even more into your experience and process. First, one of the greatest and godliest gifts within our bodies as women is our creative, life-giving power. This is a gift that can be really sensitive for a lot of women, so I want to acknowledge that, whether you are single and long to be married and long to have a baby, choose not to or have no choice in having children, our connection to this power can sometimes feel riddled with complicated feelings. I struggled to get pregnant for over 4 years and will most likely need fertility treatments to bring more children into our family. So I know that the quote unquote natural creative powers can feel anything but natural. Yet infertility gave me that much more respect and awe for the absolute miracle it is to bring life into the world. Even if you have never experienced pregnancy or birth, creation is your divine right and gift as a daughter of God. And the gap between eternal gospel ideals and reality is not shame or a God who doesn't love you. The difference is Jesus Christ. And yes, I will do an episode all about this. When people refer to priesthood power, they define it as the power and authority that God gives to man to act on his behalf for the salvation of his children. Is that not also what our creative power is? Power that God gives women to act on his behalf for the salvation of his children? We readily dismiss this parallel because men with priesthood offices have more visible roles in the church. But in terms of godly power, the creative power given to women is not ordained, it is innate. And that power is one of the sacred trusts of eternity. Do we really comprehend the magnificence of participating in the creation of a temple for a spirit child of God? From the moment a woman is born, she carries 1 to 2 million eggs. When a baby is conceived, the mother's body helps nurture the billions of new cells created daily. Her organs shift to accommodate this new life, and her uterus expands its capacity by 500 to 1,000 times. Can you imagine anything successfully expanding by 500 to 1,000 times? That's crazy! And then when it's time to give birth, her body sends all the right signals, hormones and chemicals, to begin contracting and pushing that baby out. And then after 9 months of growing the baby, her breasts fill with milk and she has the opportunity to nurse her baby even more. Do we dismiss this power because it is innate, biological, and often behind the scenes? Do we dismiss the power to carry and sustain life because the world dismisses it? I'm here to tell you that God's definition of power and glory is very different from the world's definition. And while ordained men are sent forth to bless, heal, and facilitate ordinances, women's power, from the beginning, literally enables salvation. Just as we cannot return to the Father except through Jesus Christ, humans cannot enter mortality except through a woman. Our bodies are the gatekeepers of the veil from the first to the second estate. President Dallin H. Oaks said, quote, "The power to create mortal life is the most exalted power God has given his children," end quote. If this power is to be honored and celebrated by anyone, it should be honored and celebrated by God's covenant daughters. One of the most powerful personal lessons I learned through pregnancy and giving birth is surrender. This lesson came over and over again as I waited for pregnancy, oscillating between my need for control and then melting into that trust that God is in control. And then, especially as a doula, I have learned that strong connection between fear, tension, and pain. So while I was in labor, I began to notice these fears would mount like, can I do this? Am I capable of this? And when I sunk into that fear, the pain really was so much harder to bear. And when I just surrendered and let the contractions and the discomfort be there, I felt so much more power to get through them. Now, even if I'm just getting a shot or a blood draw, I take deep breaths and try to be as relaxed as possible because I see such a difference between fear and surrender and how I even perceive pain. This works physiologically, but it is also a spiritual truth. The more we fear, resist, and fight our challenges, the more painful they are. Letting the pain be there, surrendering to it, and breathing through it allows God to really change us and make us into new creatures. This is something I couldn't learn to the same extent without having a body and needing to surrender in a much deeper way. With our ability to bear children obviously comes our ability to experience physical intimacy. This too can be riddled with very complicated feelings. But maybe that's also the point. another way to stretch us while having a physical body. Sexual intimacy brings pleasure and bonding in such beautiful ways. It can also cause heartache, pain, and betrayal. I think it is pretty significant, actually, that of all the commandments we could covenant to keep in the temple, we covenant specifically to keep the law of chastity. Though they are prerequisites to entering the temple, we do not covenant in the temple to keep the word of wisdom, or the law of tithing, or the Sabbath day. The law of chastity is the second highest law, right next to consecration. This just confirms to me that how we use our creative powers means everything to God. And I want to reaffirm what the For the Strength of Youth says about the law of chastity. Quote, "Living the law of chastity brings God's approval and personal spiritual power. When you are married, this law will bring greater love, trust, and unity to your marriage." End quote. So living the law of chastity means refraining from sex before marriage, but it also means making sex a rich and joyful part of your relationship after marriage. Satan hates your creative, godly power, and he hates meaningful sexual intimacy. He is using every angle to diminish, commercialize, exploit, and devalue one of your most godly gifts. Pornography, sex outside of marriage, infidelity are his way of using the most beautiful, sacred, and God-given thing and twisting it into something that takes you away from God and your most important relationships. Like I will repeat again and again, Satan deals in shame. And every time he can associate your God-given creative and sexual gifts with shame, the more he can take you away from really experiencing its full beauty and power. If creation and the means of creation is a power of God, then Satan wants us to hate it and misuse it. But if we invite God to help us understand, wield, and enjoy this gift, I believe it has the potential to help us understand our Father in heaven that much more. I mean, after each day of creation, he said his creations were good. And after he created Adam and Eve, he said that it was very good. Creation is part of God's joy that he wants you to experience too. I find it interesting that when it comes to taking care of the health of our physical bodies, it is not just physical blessings we are given. God doesn't say, okay, if you work out, then you will be buff. If you eat healthily, then you will be disease-free. But he does say, "Wherefore, verily I say unto you that all things unto me are spiritual, and not at any time have I given unto you a law which was temporal, neither any man nor the children of men, neither Adam, your father, whom I created." So again, our bodies are made for our spirits, and any law we are given to take care of or exercise the gifts of our bodies is given for our spiritual gain, not just our physical. That really puts the word of wisdom into perspective. Sure, there are physical health guidelines, but it was not given purely for the physical benefit of the saints, but much more so for the spiritual blessing of his people. There are literal spiritual gifts and outpourings by taking care of our bodies like we should. It may not be about our physical bodies as much as we think. God is using our bodies and our stewardship of them to teach and expand our spirits. D&C 89, 18-21 says, "And all saints who remember to keep and do these sayings, walking in obedience to the commandments, shall receive health in their navel and marrow to their bones," a physical blessing, "and shall find wisdom and great treasures of knowledge, even hidden treasures," a spiritual blessing, "and shall run and not be weary, and shall walk and not faint," a physical blessing. "And I, the Lord, give unto them a promise, that the destroying angels shall pass by them as the children of Israel, and not slay them," a spiritual blessing. Honestly, this tells me that it's not about the coffee. It's not about the alcohol. Instead, it is an invitation to stretch our bodies to not have what may be alluring in order to stretch our spirits and gain greater power and connection with God. If it happens to be healthy, then that's cool. But it is also a superpower for our spirits to exercise agency and willpower and then be that much more in tune to the Holy Ghost. I think the blessings of the word of wisdom have to be spiritual and not just physical, because no matter how perfectly you follow it and take care of this physical body of yours, you will face pain and disease. Your body has so much to lose, but your spirit has so much to gain when facing these hardships. Pain and disease are no respecters of persons and no respecters of age. Just walk through a children's hospital and you'll see how unfairly distributed pain and disease is. When you experience it firsthand, that is when you really experience the school that a physical body is. You have to dig deep when nothing else can relieve you besides Jesus. And that relief may not come in the form of physical healing. He often wants to heal you spiritually before you experience physical healing, if that healing does come. If we cannot count on our physical bodies, it is Him our spirits must learn to trust and turn to. If you've watched The Chosen, you may remember an interaction that Jesus has with little James. This scene impacted me more than almost any other in the whole series. For context, if you haven't seen it, James, one of the apostles of Jesus, has a painful limp. And obviously, this is the fictionalized version of James and not scripturally based. At one point, when Jesus begins to send his apostles out to preach the gospel and perform miracles, James feels like he can't measure up to the other apostles because of his impairment. How can he perform miracles if his own miracle hasn't come to pass? This is the conversation they have. Jesus asks James, "Do you want to be healed?" "Yes, of course," James says, "if that's possible." Jesus responds, "I think you've seen enough to know that it is possible." "Why haven't you?" he asks Jesus. Again, a question so many of us pray over and over again. "Because I trust you," Jesus says. "Little James, precious little James, I need you to listen to me very carefully, because what I'm going to say defines your whole life to this point and will define the rest of your life. Do you understand? In the Father's will, I could heal you right now. You'd have a good story to tell, yes?" "Yes," little James exclaims, "that you do miracles." That's a good story. But there are already dozens who can tell that story, and there will be hundreds more, even thousands. But think of the story that you have if I don't heal you. To know how to proclaim that you still praise God in spite of this, to know how to focus on all that matters so much more than the body, to show people that you can be patient with your suffering here on earth because you know you'll spend eternity with no suffering. Not everyone can understand that. How many people do you think the Father and I trust this with? Not many. So having a body invites us to a level of faith that is required for healing. But it also invites us into another level of faith that says, I will praise and trust you even if this struggle is never taken from me. That is tried and true faith. I'm still working on my tried and true faith. So many times during my infertility journey, I could see my righteous desires to have a baby and all my efforts to be healthy and do everything right to optimize for pregnancy, and God's ability to make this miracle happen for me and ask, like little James, why haven't you? This story from Tanya Nider changed my perspective deeply about why our prayers for physical relief may appear unanswered. After having a sinus surgery, she said, quote, I had packing in my nose, so I had to breathe through my mouth, and no matter how hydrated I tried to become, I was always parched at night. Sleep eluded me. Nausea, fatigue, and discomfort plagued me. I asked the Lord over and over for sleep. I felt it was a need, not just a request. But every time I prayed for it, I never felt the Spirit. During that difficult season of recovery, I offered the same prayer again and again, certain of both my need and the answer I hoped for, relief. I had been studying prayer, and in my circumstances, this was not a mere want. It was a genuine need, yet heaven remained silent. In time, I came to understand that the silence was not indifference, but instruction. I was being invited to pray a different prayer, not one that pressed my will forward, but one that opened my heart to God's will. It occurred to me that I may already have prayed a different prayer in that premortal realm, and that what I was experiencing, particularly the continued absence of the sleep I so desperately sought, was not the absence of an answer, but the fulfillment of a prayer given long before. End quote. Did your premortal self have hopes of who you would become through the experience of gaining a body? While you pass through your greatest physical trials, are they also the most eternal answers to prayers in shaping who you are becoming? I'm in no way dismissing the fear when you receive a cancer diagnosis, the chronic pain that plagues many and prevents daily function, the threat of a heart attack, the discouragement of disability, or any number of other physical burdens you may be carrying right now. Instead, I hope this is an invitation to let God into the pain, into the disease, to make it sacred for you. As a therapist, one thing I need to mention is the power and importance of the mind-body connection. If you have been through a significant trauma in your life, especially having to do with your physical safety or bodily autonomy, then it is a very natural response for your brain to want to disassociate from your physical experience. Maybe you feel like your body is not your own, or you feel resistance or even fear in tuning in with your present physical experience. First, this is normal. You aren't broken or defective. In fact, your brain is responding to trauma how it should. But if this is your life experience, then I would encourage you to seek help from a trauma-trained therapist to help you process and regain a sense of safety in your body. Processing trauma can be scary, but restoring your mind-body connection can change your life in really healing ways. Your mind and body were not meant to be detached. If they are detached, give yourself some compassion and then seek the healing that will help you feel safe and even joyful in your body again. Don't spend any more time than you have to feeling detached, because the tragic and beautiful truth about having this imperfect mortal shell is that it will eventually expire. All of us will die. And experiencing the death of someone you love brings grief that is impossible to fully explain to someone who has not experienced that loss. Having a physical body and then losing that physical body causes a separation that we wouldn't experience if we remain spirits in the premortal world. And separation, longing, aching is another opportunity to invite the Savior in. Death also gives meaning to life. If it just went on and on forever, we wouldn't have the same urgency to make choices, to really get to know our values and what is most important, and to cherish the fleeting time we have with those we love. Having an eventual end pushes us to pursue what otherwise could be pushed off indefinitely. In the sting of death, we also find the glorious gratitude for all that Jesus Christ gave, so that we will be resurrected one day. We can look forward with hope to the day that we are reunited with our bodies, but this time in our bodies will be different. Our bodies will be perfect and whole. This is the only time in your whole eternity you will have to carry this struggle of a mortal body. And for those who have the privilege to grow old, you only experience age once. And as my dear friend Bonnie says, if you only get old once in all of eternity, you better do it well. And perhaps because it is fleeting, it is in your physical body that you can experience indescribable beauty too. Doctrine and Covenants 93:33-34 says, "For man is spirit. The elements are eternal, and spirit and element, inseparably connected, receive a fullness of joy. And when separated, man cannot receive a fullness of joy." This fullness of joy may be easier to experience in a resurrected, perfected body, but I think there is something to be said about the joy we can experience right now when our spirits and bodies are united here. D&C 59:18-19. "Yea, all things which come of the earth in the season thereof are made for the benefit and the use of man, both to please the eye and to gladden the heart. Yea, for food and for raiment, for taste and for smell, to strengthen the body and to enliven the soul." In your body, you can taste the perfect balance of sweet and tart in a ripe autumn apple, or the earthy, woody taste of rosemary. You can hear the sound of the rain falling on the pavement, or a baby's laughter. You can smell the grass when it is freshly cut, or the rich, homey smell of bread coming out of the oven. You can feel the tickle of sand as it pours through your fingers on the beach, or the heat on the pavement on a summer's day. You can see the twinkle of stars up in the sky and the buds opening up in the spring. One question I want to challenge you to ask a family member or friend this week is this: what do you enjoy about having a body? This is different from what do you like about your body, which encourages more of a focus on body image. But sincerely ask someone, what do you enjoy about having a body? Here is my answer to that question. I love challenging my body, whether it's through a hike or a cold plunge, because when my body is pushed to the edge of its capacity, my spirit shows itself, and I get to know my own capacity that much more. I love gaining knowledge about my own cycles and rhythms and allowing that knowledge to inform my habits and my compassion towards myself. I love nursing my baby and the rush of love I feel when I sit down to rock and nourish her. Even in the early days when there were so many bleary-eyed feedings, it felt like this sacred space that only belonged to the two of us, awake at 2 a.m. while the rest of the world slumbered, snuggling her little body against mine. I love those long-awaited hugs when you are reunited with loved ones after a while apart. I love when I sleep so deeply that I wake up in the same position I fell asleep in, and I'm so refreshed when morning arrives. I love tasting new foods as I travel and learning from the sense of taste what different cultures love and value. Some meals are just unforgettable. That taco, that lasagna, that ramen, that fondue. I love walking or sitting outside and just taking in as many senses as I can. Lately, when I walk my dog in the mornings and the sun still hasn't risen, I can hear a great horned owl hooting in the neighborhood. It's kind of magical. And speaking of which, I love waking up and witnessing sunrises that are as breathtaking and sometimes more so than sunsets. I love being held and holding. I love taking in deep breaths. I love seeing how it takes time, but that my body can heal. I just love this quote from Hunter Thompson. Life is not a journey to the grave with the intention to arrive safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, "Wow, what a ride!" Maybe he was going for a more reckless approach to life, but in my eyes, this encourages me to thoroughly use up and soak up the experience of having a physical body. Life is worth giving your lifeblood to, and your body is worth honoring as the temple and school it is for your eternal gain. And I guess I should say potential eternal gain, because your physical body and experiences in it can turn you to the Savior, but they can also be the way Satan gets to you the most. Satan can send in resentment, bitterness, discouragement, exhaustion, and temptation, and use our bodies as a tool to take us away from the Spirit. I feel like it has to be an active, concerted effort to consecrate our bodies to God, to His work and His glory. Paul says in Romans, quote, "Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship." End quote. If we offer our bodies as a living sacrifice to Christ, we give our whole selves to God as an act of worship and devotion, using our mortal physical bodies and experiences for holy, righteous purposes rather than selfish desires. This is what teaches us about Jesus. When we give our bodies and our whole physical experiences to Him, He knows intimately how to make that holy, because He Himself gave His body for us. Elder Jeffrey R. Holland, whom I will miss dearly, said this: Jesus has chosen, even in a resurrected, otherwise perfected body, to retain for the benefit of His disciples the wounds in His hands and in His feet and in His side. Signs, if you will, that painful things happen, even to the pure and perfect. Signs, if you will, that pain in this world is not evidence that God doesn't love you. Signs, if you will, that problems pass and happiness can be ours. End quote. With that quote in mind and being in the throes of early postpartum recovery, I wrote a poem. Though I had childbearing in mind, this may resonate with the scars you have gained through your life and journey with your physical body, and what deep spiritual lessons have come from them. Are you ready? He asks with light in his eyes. The day has finally come, more nuanced than once surmised. Resurrection Day, what a relief, what a transformation. But I'm examining my scars and feeling hesitation. With this ultimate reunion of spirit to body, I can be free of the aches, imperfections, the old me. Yet I look down from his eyes to his hands and wrists and realize his scars remain etched deep. They still exist. Why did you keep these scars? I longingly ask. You could have left that pain completely in the past. They remind me of love, of all I went through. They remind me of sacrifice. They remind me of you. As that realization seeped into my being, I understood my hesitation had a greater meaning. My scars, too, tell a story of giving. The most intimate ones tell of bearing and delivering. My body was bruised, broken, and stretched, all for a similar, encompassing love to be etched. I want the pain to be taken away, but the scars I might actually want to stay. They tell of a journey I don't want erased, of all that I gave, a lesson that can't be replaced. I remember my first sacrament after birth. The bread and the water suddenly had new worth. I gave a small portion of body and blood. Now all that he gave reflects even more love. This baby I now give all to hold and nurture will never know all that I gave. Can you blame her? In a much greater way, I am in debt to Jesus, and his scars remind me of a love that is flawless. So yes, on that glorious day of reunion, if I have a chance to keep them or have none, I'll gratefully look him in the eye and say, these scars are what helped me know you and can stay. Okay, so you may not be in a place where you feel any gratitude about your physical ailments. You may be in the depths of despair over your physical experience. I want you to know that there is nothing too dark or too deep for the Savior. He knows pain intimately. He wants to hold you through it if you let him. He literally came to earth to get a body so he could know from experience how to help you through your experience with your body. And that is a gift. Receiving that gift actively, willingly giving that sacrifice, consecrating your bodily experience for your spiritual gain changes you. That's the point. If you enjoyed this podcast, I hope the Spirit guides you to how you can receive the gift of your body more actively. Please share this episode with a friend that could use it. Any reviews, comments, or follows help these messages get to more people. So it would mean a lot if you took a moment to do one of those things. Thanks for listening. All my love till next time.